They said it was clean, too cheap to meter. Built the dome, then cooked the beaker. Said the rod was safe as sealed in drums, but left them leaking out of Idaho slums. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. They chase the sun, all fusion proud. Ignore the barrels stacked in clouds. Promise stars in every socket, while curium settled in the market. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. Chart is clean, while whales rolled up beside the submarine. Blame the algae, blame the rain, but never trace the gamma chain. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. Now the rods are rusting, the record spins. Mama warned them too many sins. Keep your son, keep your lab coat pride, till you fix the waste you tried to hide. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done.
Awesome, loving it. My goodness, what a way to start the show off. There's a link in the description for people right to that song, and you'll find over 400 anti-nuclear songs like this there. It's incredible. And that's the only spot on the planet you'll ever find that. In fact, he's produced more anti-nuclear music than the entire planet combined. I can't say it without giggling because that is hilarious. Because that's something the nuclear industry has never seen coming. Another one that's pretty hilarious, by the way, I'm Dana. I just got off work and got all equipment still on. I apologize. Too tired to even go home. Just get in the studio, get out a presentation on. We have a crazy event taking place in Jamaica. Holy smokes, we're jumping there right away. The winds are not ashore, but they're going to be hitting at over 175 miles per hour. I'm going to assume when it gets into that shallow coastal water, Jamaica is known for warm water. We're going to probably see 190 mile per hour, 195 even, coming ashore, not counting Gust. Right, and so a lot of people are starting to agree with my assessment that we're going to see about 250 miles per hour. I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. I hope all you pray I'm wrong too. I think that would be the greatest thing ever that I'm wrong. So the Canadian small modular reactor, there was supposed to be two doors you're looking at right there. So those doors must be 30 feet high compared to that van. That's a rendition. It's just a computer graphic of the so-called small modular reactors. In Canada, the boiling water reactor 300, they're going to be actually 24-story buildings. They're going to have half of it underground, but they're still showing that picture, the dirt bags. Okay, let's talk about that stuff. So you got a Hurricane Melissa straightened to a Category 5. I've been tracking it all day. I'm terrified. I'll explain why to you and this is an annihilator coming into Jamaica. This is an annihilator. And I'm going to present my evidence that I've gathered up from multiple sources today. We got a nuclear show to get through on top of that. Don't miss that, folks, if you haven't been here before. Melissa has maximum sustained winds that was this morning at 160 mile per hour, 160 miles per hour. So, like, I've seen lots of forecasts where it's blowing 15 miles per hour and they expect gusts of 35, right? I've seen lots of forecasts where they're blowing 40 miles an hour expecting gusts of 70 and 80. And I've seen lots of forecasts from the weather channels and places like that of 70 miles per hour and they expect gusts to 110, 140 even. So why is that when we get into these high numbers, the most they're going to tack on is 30 extra miles per hour? Why is that? Because that's not how it works in the real world. We've seen this many times now, where they completely drop the ball in warning people. They'll get to 155 and they call it a Category 4. It's coming ashore in the communities with millions of people. And because haven't got the extra 5 miles per hour, it hasn't 155, so therefore it doesn't get the prominence of a Category 5. But the people on shore don't care because the difference in the damage is very little between 150 and 155. It's very little. And if they were told it was a Category 5, they would change their plans for staying and trying to protect their home because they know it can't be done, right? And they would hopefully take their pets with them. Melissa has maximum sustained winds, 160, is now 175. We can expect it's going to strike land. As it's coming ashore, it's got a lot of force and energy and everything else. So it's going to have a big storm surge. I just want to walk through about 30 of my concerns. The hurricane force winds extend outwards of up to 30 miles, 60 miles, not counting the eye. Like the media is so deceptive for so long. And let's just break it down. Winds gusts exceeding 180 miles per hour. So if it's gusting 160, I can tell you right now, it's insane to suggest that it's only going to have a 20 mile per hour increment on a wind gust. Wind gusts are going to be 50, 60, 70, 80, maybe even 100 miles per hour. When you're at 150 and above miles per hour, the storms we've been looking at, the Meranti in China, the cyclone, Meranti was it? Just in one place in China, it knocked down 500 million trees, 500 million trees. These are post-Fukushima events. Now, there's been supercell storms since the 40s because of the nuclear testing worldwide. It's a catalyst for this kind of stuff. And I explained that to you coming up. Slow moving, so it's moving at 2-3 miles per hour. So what we've been seeing in these supercell storms post-Fukushima is instead of coming to a landmass and just losing power and going out the other side fairly quickly, because that's how they just stall. And then they just grind up the whole communities and coastlines and the shelter for all the species. There's around 1,400 species of animals you have to be concerned about. You have to be concerned about underwater too, because you're talking about reefs, you're talking about damage from the coral. This stuff takes many centuries to get a good foundation in areas. Slow moves, so you're talking about legacy species. Slow-moving Hurricane Melissa strengthens to a Category 5, poised to deliver historical blow. Historical blow. In 174 years of keeping records, this is the worst storm they've ever seen in 174 years. So this is the strongest storm ever to come ashore in Jamaica, and it's going to come straight into Kingston, which is like the central. It's a deep bay, and so it's going to have a storm surge, because the original storm surge estimations this morning were based up on 160 mile per hour winds. We know now the winds are 175. This is madness. Category 6 at this stage. That don't exist, of course, but it should. Extreme danger, right? So it's going to be channeled into Kingston, which is a major metropolitan area. There's around 3 million people in Jamaica. It's 150 miles long and 50 miles wide. So normally a storm comes in, starts to lose speed right away, and shortly after it's gone right through, like the intensity part a few hours later. What it's doing, what the storm is, the supercell cyclones, the supercell typhoons, the supercell hurricanes, the derricos, they're just showing up and they're staying and grinding out. We don't expect, at these winds, we're not expecting on the facing side to have any tree branches left. We're expecting everything that's loose is going to be turned into projectiles that are formidable against any kind of shelter. With gusts exceeding 180 miles per hour, like the winds now we know are 175. The gusts are going to be 240, I hope I'm not, I pray I'm wrong, 240, 250 miles per hour. And I won't be surprised later on to find out it was 260, 265 gusts. Particularly with Jamaica is known for sucking the air up the mountains. At the same time, you're going to have enormous rainfalls. The mountains kind of produce moisture too, right? And so that's going to come down and meet the storm surge. The storm surge is animosity equivalent of a tsunami, right? It should be treated with that kind of prominence that it's like a tsunami. Could be the most intense hurricane ever to strike Jamaica. Well, that's not up for debate no more. So, this is a monster storm. It has now grown into something totally unique. And there's speculation, of course, of HARP, other techniques to enhance it. There's a hate on for Jamaica in the globalist world. Other banded together to chastise a cohort of foreign storm chasers who were perceived to be almost gleefully predicting annihilation for Jamaica. That's a fact. And we see that a lot, not all storm, but we do see this. They live in their own little world, they get a big audience, and they're more worried about the audience putting off a show sometimes, it seems, than they are about helping the victims. They're just going to chase down the storm, get their pictures, and monitorize everything. You know, you go look at their videos. This is not for public use. They got a big banner on it. It's not a public service. They're a business, right? For Jamaica in the face of hurricanes impending passage, this thing is going to be slow. This is not going to just run through. So it's a 150 mile long island, 152 or whatever it is, and it's 50 miles wide. So you won't expect it typically pre-Fukushima, because the Fukushima radioactive fallout worldwide on the land and the ocean has changed the equation post-2011, right? The Earth has lost its bacteria, its fungus for the most part, particularly North America is a prime example. The forests are not breaking down the foliage in the litter anymore, so when you get lightning strikes, the big foliage and litter that normally was broken down by the biota and the fungus and the bacteria, and the fungus, the bacteria, the biota, in your forests and your meadows, that soaks up the water, that holds the water, that's the soup of life, that's the biota. And that's missing now in our forests, right? We're seeing these we predicted that after Fukushima because of the enormous amount of quantity that was released, and it was covered up successfully. And so we've been staying true to the story and documenting everything every chance we can, like I'm ran into the ground. After all these years, we spent 6 years doing research expeditions, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean when they're coming home. From Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, the species were wiped out, right? Actually, I'll give you some examples of that coming up. Here's one example. The species to your left is how it should look on the shoreline at low tide. They're gone. It's like that all the way, actually, from Mexico, California, Canada, and all the way to Alaska. That's not conjecture or opinion, that's a fact. So producing gusts exceeding 220 to 260, somewhere in that area, the truth will come out, or if not right away, but certainly within a few days, those numbers will. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but because generally we provide the documentation for our assertions. But I've been doing this for so long, it's so much work always to quantify every single sentence, right? And we challenge the industry's laws, and we have to quantify that by showing you the documentation. It's quite intensive to do this kind of work. And you're not allowed to make a single Freudian slip because that gets chopped up and strung together, eventually used to bludgeon you with. Exceeding 180 miles per hour. It's going to be 400 kilometers an hour. It's going to be 250 miles per hour gust in certain parts. And if not, hopefully, it's only just small parts of the country that's going to happen to it. But obviously, we're talking 175, and they're all acknowledging that. The water's extremely warm. Post-Fukushima, we've seen this particular attribute worldwide get worse and worse every year, as was predicted. And so the foliage in the litter, and let me finish that part off, the bacteria and the fungus would break, and the biota breaks down the foliage in the litter in your forests and your meadows, right? That's the cycle of life, so to speak. But that's also what retains the water into the earth, that whole cycle. Because we don't have that anymore for the most of the world now. South America's hanging on, but it's not 100% anymore. The 80 years of emissions from nuclear industries are already sentenced us to incredible shadow of a planet. This planet would be beautiful if we didn't have the nuclear industry for 80 years releasing isotopes all over the planet nonstop from 1,000 fuel pools. So the big problem with Jamaica, of course, and other places we're seeing post-Fukushima is flash floods, because the earth is not soaking up water anymore. It's soaking up heat. So you have all the heat now that doesn't belong there, is not part of the biodiversity, is not part of the cycle of life that is, we're used to for many generations. And the ocean is heated up because you wiped out the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. It's the most important facet too on top of that. And so once you broke that food chain, we got emaciated whales of every species all over the place. And I'll show you some pictures coming up. This is stuff we've never heard tell of pre-Fukushima. Let me keep going here because, again, this stuff is complicated and I'm not going to rush. And there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of little details, minutiae. You got to get the minutiae of the minutiae of the minutiae, so to speak. You got to detail the details of details. Local maximum total of 40 inches. Well, I've heard estimates from the main medias, the main mouthpieces, of up to 3 feet in the mountains. And because the earth is tinder dry, it's not going to get soaked up in the earth. And I'll be, unfortunately, going to be proven right tomorrow. I pray I'm wrong. Local, but all the worst cards now, this is an annihilation machine coming through Jamaica. And these people are impoverished. They don't have resources, they don't have water, or they don't have the food. Well, they'll have the water, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I guess, but it's in a bad way. There's going to be a massive amount of landslides. Such rainfalls will cause catastrophic flash flooding, numerous landslides. For comparison, Kingston typically receives 800 millimeters of rain in an entire year. Storm surges now, instead of 13 feet, you can expect 15 to 20 feet or more. This is going to be madness. And this is going to strike in about 8 or 9 hours. And Cuba could expect some of these attributes, well, a lot of these attributes. But I'm not sure right now, which is just a few hours after Jamaica gets stripped. It'll be stripped of all of the branches and all the trees, and most of the topsoil will be stripped out of the country with these types of winds. You're going to see just stark, the forest will be just pieces of stick with all kinds of weight broken off, things sticking out of it. That's where the branches used to be. The storm is forecast, and there's 1,400 species. Where are they going to hide during this? And the shelter they got for the people there is just, it doesn't have any of the attributes. You're talking about everything. You're talking about a bottle cap could kill you at 250 miles per hour. Everything, every house that's torn apart, these dilapidated temporary structures that people have built are going to be turned into projectiles. That'll go through cars, through, these dilapidated shelters that you see across the country. Storm is forecast to cross Jamaica Tuesday morning. Because it's going to be another grinder where it's just going to hit the coastline and stall. And at these numbers, it's probably going to strip a lot of pavement off the roads too, which is what we've seen. And remember in St. Kitts a few years ago, I can't remember which hurricane that was, it blew, there was a new apartment building built for tourists, where all the yachts used to be tied up and they all washed up. Remember that spot? I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was St. Kitts. The winds blew all the furnitures out of a 18-story building. It blew the windows and the doors, the bedroom doors, the hallway doors. It blew all the furniture. Wrap your mind around my statement. That's what we're going to see in Jamaica. Like the skyscrapers are going to lose all the furniture, and anybody that's in these buildings. We've seen it before, post-Fukushima. It's slow moving, it's just going to grind the coastline out. So they were talking about 170 mile per hour, the weatherman, and I didn't agree with that because we knew the winds was 160 at that point, right? That was the consensus, that the wind was blowing 160. So he was estimated 165 mile per hour, gusting to 200 mile per hour, maximum gusts. And unfortunately, he's going to be wrong about that. I was trying to figure out how many animals live in Jamaica. There was just 18 in that particular story. That these are some of the animals you can expect to see out there. They're not going to have any shelter. There's a list of critically endangered animals too to think about. The total number of species is over 1,550 species. We're just talking Jamaica. We're not talking about the other beautiful places there. Category 5 Hurricane Melissa is the right name for it. Melissa strengthens as it heads for Jamaica. It's moving at a worryingly slow pace, meaning areas in its path could see punishing conditions for far longer than the hurricane to pass by more quickly. Extreme rainfall, owing to that slow motion, it's going to be picking up the ocean and dropping it too, right? It's going to create a catastrophic event here for Jamaica, yes. It's going to be a nihilistic event for a large chunk of that country. Conditions will deteriorate really, really rapidly here in the next few hours. Don't be out and about after sunset. I would be digging a hole in the ground. I would. If I lived in that environment, I already have a shelter underground, and I would have a very heavy roof on it. Right, that was cemented to the ground. There's zero possible, and I would be high enough not to worry about surge or landslides or rainfall filling me up. But when you talk about I'm surprised the country doesn't have a whole bunch of bunkers in the side of the mountains and that for people to hide away in, right? That would be the easiest solution. Mine shafts, right? You need that kind of shelter from these kind of winds. Everything's a projectile. The last major hurricane to impact Jamaica was the Beryl. Kind of reminds you of beryllium, nuclear isotopes, man-made isotopes, because that was in early 2024. It was considered an abnormally strong storm for that time of year. No. Now, post-Fukushima, this is normal. You expect this all the time. It's a record storm. In neighboring Haiti, the storm destroyed crops in 3 regions. 37 acres of maize, hopefully not GMO, but I know it is. At a time when at least 5.7 million people, more than half the country's population, is experiencing crisis levels of hunger, with 1.9 million of those facing emergency levels of hunger, starvation, so famine. Flooding is obstructing access to farmland and markets, jeopardizing harvest and winter agricultural seasons. Well, my goodness, they're talking about 37 acres and millions of people depending upon these small. It's insane. The UN Food and Agricultural Organization said they got a subsidy company, the UN does, for every facet of humanity's activities. And they are controlling most of it worldwide. You have to go there to get, if you're the media, you go to UN to get their official numbers on anything before you write an article and put it in the media. That is disgusting. They have no sovereignty over any country. So today you can see YouTube videos, mainstream medias, we're saying 160 miles per hour. That was the consensus this morning. You have 2.8 million people, $33 billion GDP, and you have an average of 4.3 million tourists a year who don't want to be in concrete domes, so they got very lightly, everything is like a tropical atmosphere, no windows in a lot of the buildings. To give it a nice earsy feeling, right? Fukushima had 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools full of reactor cores melt down 14 years ago. Now, this is a last week's story of an emaciated bridge whale. There's 26 killer whales, orcas. This was one of the first ones they found, but we don't have 26 pictures. We have these distant pictures, because when you look at this picture here, if you know what you're looking at, you know that's an emaciated whale. And the orcas, of course, the killer whales, feed on over 240 species. So there's no reason, there's still food out there, so there's no reason they should be emaciated. We're seeing this symmetrical. New Zealand, Belgium are infinitely worse than that, but you can see the rib cage, the shoulder blades, that's severe emaciation. But I mean, that's over the top. That was alive when he came ashore, that bridge whale, believe it or not. And we covered these die-offs multiple times a month for over a decade straight. This was a story from yesterday. That's an emaciated gray whale. All the gray whales on their migratory route that's left, 14,000 died post-Fukushima, most of it starvation, clearly starvation. We've covered the majority of it. It's the same thing for the humpback whales, the covert beak whales, the orcas. That's an emaciated whale they're showing you there. Trying to blame it on a ship strike. Slow-moving Hurricane Melissa, we do that all day too, threatens to Category 5, poised to deliver a historical blow. No. So they're saying gust exceeding 180 miles per hour, but it's actually 175 mile per hour sustained winds as we talk, or worse at last count. So gusts are going to be exceeding 220, 230, maybe 250, 260. We'll see it top out in a few places. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I mean, my goodness, there's no building codes in Jamaica for 100 mile per hour winds. There's no building codes for 150 mile per hour winds. There's no building codes for 200 mile per hour winds, because we've never had that pre-Fukushima on a regular basis, right? Since like people say, oh, back in the 60s we seen it there, and back in the 80s. Yes, during the nuclear bomb testing, we certainly did. You notice a lot of, the die-offs on this planet are post-nuclear industry, the mass starvation events on this planet. It could be the most intense hurricane ever to strike Jamaica. That could be. It's unequivocally And the consensus, everybody agrees with that assessment, right? So why is some media still on the fence when they should be warning people? I mean, you're talking about 4 million tourists. There ain't 4 million tourists flying, or not 4 million, but I mean, that's 11,000 a day or something, right? So it takes a lot of planes to get those people into that area. And they're not going to get them all out because the planes won't be able to fly soon. Others banded together, chastised the cohort. We covered that, actually. What's going on here? Oh, they just repeated the story, was it? Catastrophic flash flooding. Yeah, we covered that. I smurfed up. Oh, we did cover all that. Why am I down here for? So I've done research expeditions post-Fukushima, and from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, and the species to your left are missing. And so climate change is 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry. Let me just give you a little bit of insight on what I mean when I talk about that kind of stuff. So radiation is the only emission that creates a plume that covers the planet. This is the French government's model of cesium-137 only. Of course, there's 1,000 other isotopes in the same plume. This is at 1 million to 10 million atoms, and each atom is going to pulse energy almost at the speed of light, 600 feet every second for 300 years. So this is a 23-day study of a spike in the United States and Canada of cesium-137, but by day 23, the whole planet is covered. And so this attacks everything with replicating cells. And there's no species on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. It's not just cancer. Heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary. So gas, oil, and coal emissions don't make plumes like this. Right? It's very big particulates and particles, and they don't go that far. Heavy winds, they might travel 50 miles. But these are microscopic particles. Think of an invisible snowstorm that after 23 days, the snow never stops and the snow never goes away, never melts. Now call it radiation instead, and where it's invisible, you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it or perceive it. And its effects upon the species after we went up for 6 years doing research expeditions. And in Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, there's 27,000 islands. There's a tropical paradise, tropical rainforest. You see, there used to be 30,000 insects at the high tide line. The species to your left are exterminated. And the government still hasn't acknowledged it. There was one acknowledgement that came out in 2016. All along Canada, it wasn't just Canada, United States, California, Mexico, all along Canada's Pacific coast, all along the eastern seaboard of the Pacific, mussels, the west coast rather, mussels are dying, bodies are swollen by cancerous tumors. An unprecedented mutation allowing cancer in mussels, wrap your mind around that statement, allowing cancer to spread from one species to another like a virus. And see, I was out doing research expeditions at that time, but when I come ashore, I was showing these pictures saying the species are gone. And I'm the only person I know on the planet that was doing extensive research expeditions and then coming out and sharing that documentation with the evidence of Fukushima happening, right? The winds blow straight across the ocean. So the species to your left are exterminated post-Fukushima. That's the Fukushima effect. What would you rather have, nuclear power? And so it's hard to comprehend how a few buildings could cause such devastation, right? I absolutely get that. It's hard to appreciate a couple of buildings could have that kind of effect. But if you look at the cover story,
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4.
So they're claiming they're 150 feet above that building. That's just a fraction of the media. Do you think they're doing that because nuclear is harmless? Or do you think they're doing it because the species are missing and they don't want to get the blame for it? The species to your left died post-Fukushima, and everybody noticed it in the academic communities and the nuclear industry. The people that were following me for all those research expeditions, I provide the documentation for all of my assertions. And if you go into my playlist, I'll bring that up for you. If you go into my playlist, click on playlist, and you'll see mass species die-off, birds, insects. Just click on view the full playlist, and we cover this all the time here, but that's not all the videos on my site. That's some of the videos. So there are recent videos, for instance, 1 month ago, 2 months 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 ago, 5 months ago. That doesn't mean between 2 and 5 months that I didn't produce any. I just didn't put them in the... If you search my site, you'll find those videos too, right? This is nonstop. And as you can see, the playlist is barely moved. As you go down through this playlist, you watch any of these videos, I'll provide you with the documentation and current die-offs and previous die-offs, and then I'll tie it together with the evidence for the nuclear industry. Could Fukushima radioactive fallout worldwide be the catalyst behind Hurricane Melissa ferocious winds? And the idea of these polls in this context is to highlight, to highlight to you those particular attributes. We'll cover some nuclear news cycle, and then we'll go back to the hurricane news. And we know in about 4 to 5 hours, it's going to be brutal in Jamaica. I'm just going to check right quick for any recent news stories. I'm in the 1 hour cycle right now. This is not like any other hurricane people have lived through in North America. This is a supercell storm caused by the changed conditions on our planet post-Fukushima. Japan's Great Wall will cost almost $13 billion. They're building, I think it's a 400-kilometer wall to try to prevent tragedies in the future. They got to build it where the tectonic plates are too, right? And so I'm kind of confused. I thought the tectonic plates were more towards Fukushima, towards the north. 400-kilometer coastline, Iwate, Miyagi, Fukushima. So yeah, they are going to do it. 50-meter high to reduce the impact of the tsunami. I can't remember how deep it is under the ground. I got it here. 12 meters, 15 at critical points. Multiplied by 3 to get feet. An estimated cost in U.S. at almost $13 billion. It crosses 3 prefectures, protect 300 communities. 30 million cubic meters of concrete. That's interesting because you picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout just in the Fukushima prefecture. Right, there should be 150,000 pictures like that of the sites where they were storing them. Now, because it's going to be so wide, you'll see what I mean coming up. There are more pictures. 50,000 people working on it, 24 hours per day. 72 kilometers from the coast, 30 kilometers deep. So Japan's is metric, same as the French, same as Canada. So 72 kilometers from the coastline, tectonic plates are off Fukushima, and 30 kilometers deep. So it was the tectonic plates that let go in 2011, right? That's what caused the displacement of the water and the tsunami, the 500-mile-per-hour tsunami. And it reached over 40 meters, 120 feet. We know at one place it was 140 feet. 470,000 homes were homeless, rather. 120,000 buildings were destroyed. And I thought it was 280,000 were severely damaged. They screwed up a few things in the story. It must have been translation, I don't know. Saltwater contaminated 560 square kilometers of agricultural land. That doesn't mean it was only agricultural land, right? It's interesting they left the rest of that out. Economic cost reached $235 billion. They spent $48 billion picking up 30 million one-ton bags of topsoil, radioactive topsoil. A Great Wall of Japan is a continuous system of coastal defenses, with the foundation dipping 60 feet underground. So it's deeper underground than it is above ground. Isn't that interesting? And it's wide. We got pictures, I'm pretty sure, yeah. Here we go. See how wide it actually is? Let me just change formats here for a bit, where I can zoom in. Because I don't think I've done that. You can see how wide it is, though, right? So it starts right there and ends right here, right? So that's very wide. Let me fix the bottom of that. That's a bit weird. Right there. Here we go. Let me get back after it. That just bounced. So the wall is quite insane, really. Now they have gates that will open and close automatically. It's got 100-year durability cement, they say, for marine corrosion. It's guaranteed for 100 years not to corrode. They have gates for the fishermen to come and go about their business. And they have sensors on the ocean floor that will close the gates in about 5 minutes when the tsunami alarm is triggered. 20 meters underground. Seismic sensors in the ocean floor will trigger sirens and automatically close the gates. So the fisherman is screwed. He better stay at sea. In deep water, the wave, the tsunami, travels at 800 kilometers an hour, just over a meter tall. And as you approach the coast, the base slows down as the energy goes up, multiplying the height. 800 kilometers an hour. It's almost 500 miles per hour. The past teaches a chronology of tragedies and lessons. In 1896, a moderate tremor, 7.2, that did not alarm the population. 35 minutes later, a wave of 38 meters allegedly killed 22,000 people. Well, because it's the tectonic plates. So when the tectonic plates dropped, in Japan's case, it was a rupture of about 480 kilometers. I can't remember the exact numbers, unfortunately. And so you displaced the tsunami that wide. It took you 1,200, almost 1,300 kilometers of the coastline was flooded. And people needed rescuing. Yeah. And that place, that tsunami was up there. Fukushima is right here, right there, basically. So that whole coastline, why would you build reactors there? That whole coastline is incredibly active. Hence the proverb, when the earth shakes, don't wait, run upwards. They actually have 300-year-old signs at 300 feet above sea level saying don't build your houses below this because of tsunamis, with 3,000-year history. The country sits on 4 tectonic plates, a record tsunami since 684 AD. They've been recording it. Children grow up without seeing the ocean from their schools or home windows. Tourism fell by 40% in the areas with a visible barrier, closing hotels and restaurants. The calculations indicate the potential to save 80 lives So they're going to block everybody's view of the oceans for 300 communities so they can save an extra 80 lives. Japan is not actually, post-Fukushima, is not notorious for being noble or stoic at all. They have some, it does want the industry to look bad, is all it is. So they're doing this to protect the nuclear industry, not the people. Why would you build cities 70 kilometers away from tectonic plates for? With a 3,000-year legacy of massive tsunamis that you can't run at 500 miles per hour. Yes, $38 billion and counting. The predictable collapse of Europe's nuclear discipline. This is Sizewell sea ballooning budget. Shows how Europe keeps ignoring every condition for successful nuclear programs. 38 billion. The original estimate wasn't even 20 billion, it was actually 10 billion, right? So they're saying 20 billion. If they doubled from the 20 billion to nearly 38 billion in today, is shocking but predictable. The original numbers were 10 or 12 billion. We've covered it quite a few times here. This project, part of Europe's broader push for nuclear power to meet climate goals. The climate, like the bizarre climate that we're seeing, right? The death of the forest, the death of the bacteria, the fungus, the death of the biota, the death of the species in the oceans are a nuclear thing, post-nuclear industry. So when, the studies looking at, doctors back in the 50s were describing radiation fallout as a biological weapon because of its absurd, like, it attacks everything with replicating cells. And so, like Chernobyl, we know, for instance, it wipes out the fungus, it wipes out the bacteria, it wipes out the biota, which breaks down the foliage in the litter. And without that stuff there, the earth doesn't suck up water and it doesn't perspire the morning dew anymore, per se, right? Hey, how you liking the last 2 weeks? You see the clouds with the blue sky behind it? It's been a while since you've seen that, hasn't it? The EPA came out and said that they're going to share all their chemtrailing. Chemtrail is real. There's over 30 states in the United States that have sanctions for chemtrailing over their state. There's 132 ski sites that chemtrail their skies to make snow. This technology was born back in the 40s. During the Vietnam War, they made it rain over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The monsoons last an extra 6 weeks. They washed away villages. The British did. They got this stuff to a science. In the last 2 weeks, they haven't been chemtrailing here in Canada or United States. Ain't that interesting? And it was really interesting here in Canada because now we know who've been chemtrailing us. But the EPA just told us 2 days ago, the director no less, they're going to release all the information they're gathering up on the chemtrails, who's doing it, etc., who's paying for it and everything else. Ain't that interesting? You need sunshine, see? You need that blue sky. Chemtrails trap the heat in. Helps melt the Arctic. They don't need it anymore. Fukushima accomplished all of it. The glaciers don't crystallize anymore. They lost everything on the west coast in the Rocky Mountains in less than 4 years post-Fukushima. All the glaciers that are tens of thousands of years old disappeared in 4 years. When we started doing our research, we had glaciers. 4 years later, they were gone. I mean, gone, unless you get snow. I don't deal in conspiracy theories, so don't call me a conspiracy theorist. I deal in hard facts. These are facts. These are not conjectures. These are not my opinion. These are facts. This project part of Europe's broader push for nuclear power to meet climate goals. Well, the radiation, you've been releasing it now from 1,000 fuel pools. So each fuel pool is full of reactor cores. Each reactor core boils water when it was used for millions of homes and businesses each day. For 1 million homes and businesses. And so you got 4 reactor cores in a pool. So it's still splitting atoms for 4 million homes and businesses each day. It's just not creating power. is boiling off 120,000 liters. Each liter is full of hundreds of trillions anthropogenic brutal isotopes that are released into the environment through the tall, skinny stacks. So everything that's been released for 80 years, all the bombs, all the dumping, all the cover-ups, all the nuclear meltdowns, none of it went away. Everything is still out there pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. Gas, oil, and coal emissions, which is carbon, which is what everything is made of. You got no carbon, will look like the moon. The more carbon you got, the more trees, the more plants, the more insects, the more puppies, the more pizzas, the more everything, the more life you got. Carbon is your friend. And social engineers got the population so confused, incapable of having critical thinking skills. So radiation fallout is your climate change, 80 years of it. It's real. Trust me, it's real. Is again raising fundamental question about whether European governments' utilities have truly laid the groundwork for successful nuclear power scaling. The economy is what they call the economy of scale. Or if they continue to underestimate the scale of the task. Nice pun. I'm not going to be very nice about it. Hurricane Melissa strengthens to a Category 5. So that was around noon or something today. I grabbed that. We're still looking at 160 mile per hour winds. OPG announces Canadian $3 billion investment deal to de-risk the Darlington nuclear project. So Canada's going to build the world's first massive small modular reactor. It has a higher risk profile for planned nuclear small modular reactor, limits access to traditional financing. So the Ontario provincial government, OPG, is in Canada, central Canada, is going to chip in $3 billion Canadian dollars, which is equal to about 65 cents in the United States or something. This is not going to be a small modular reactor. They're calling it the Boiling Water Reactor X-300. It's actually a 24-story building. I covered it pretty good last night. Canada Growth Fund, of all things, which is supposed to be there for clean energy, not dirty nuclear, and Building Ontario Fund have announced an equity commitment agreement to finance up to $3 billion between them in small modular reactor projects existing at the Darlington Nuclear Power Station. CGF is a government-backed fund that aimed to attract private capital to build Canada's clean economy. So they find the money, and nobody knows whose pension they're going to steal that from, but that's how they're going to do it. The current estimate to construct 4 small modular reactor units at Darlington is $21 billion basically, Canada. This is madness for 1,200 megawatts. South Korea can give you 4,000 megawatts for the same price. I'm not saying any of it's good. Nuclear is disgusting. They can't contain the emissions. When you take fuel and put it in the fuel pool, you're going to poison everybody for the entire planet all day, every day. You got 1,000 fuel pools just hemorrhaging radioactive plumes into your ecosystem. And you don't have an immune system to defend against it. Neither does any other species of the 8 million species, including interest, escalation, and contingency. This is mad as Stephen suggested. Promise you the star and give you a big bill. When completed, they're expected to deliver up to 1,200 megawatts of electricity. What kind of joke is that? They announced that it's selected in 2021, and we haven't left them alone since, the Boiling Water Reactor X-300 reactor for deployment at the Darlington site in Ontario, Canada, and Lake Ontario, one of the biggest aquifers on the planet. Only a handful of small modular reactors have been completed, none in Russia and China. There wasn't either one in Russia. It was a barge, a derelict barge that they'd done an experiment on. And it's 15 stories above sea level. Who knows how deep it is? So it's not a small modular reactor. The Canadian small modular reactor is 35 meters up and 38 meters below the ground. 10 stories up and 11 stories. Have you ever been in a 10-story underground building before? In order to build the tiny, microscopic, small modular reactors, Canada needs 10 stories underground, 12 stories above it, 11 stories, they're saying. It's actually 240 foot, that's 24 stories. Right, that's 24 stories. It's a 24-story building. Versus, this is on their site today. That's their site, Hitachi site. And when you look at this, of course, it looks like a bucket of ice cream, right? You know, those little 1 liter buckets of ice cream you can buy, and they're really stupid looking, right? And it looks like it's one turned upside down, doesn't it? There's actually going to be a 24-story building. It's going to be a skyscraper. They're going to put half of it underground. It's not going to look anything like that. It's absurd. It's absurd to suggest that's an 11-story building. It's absurd to suggest that that's a 140-foot building. So when you look at them, I finally said, well, let's put them side by side, see what we get out of it. Even that doesn't do it justice. Right? I was trying to be, like low-ball the height difference. It doesn't do it justice. It's not going to be carbon-free. They're the dirtiest technology in human history. They're the most resource-intensive in human history. I mean, $20 billion is the low-ball number for a lousy 1,200 megawatts. Geothermal would give you over 4,000 megawatts for less than that price. And you don't have to come up with the technology that already exists. You can't call it carbon-free. It's absurd. You can't call it competitive. For the same amount of money, $20.9 billion, you're talking about $5.225 billion a reactor. It's going to put out a paltry 300 megawatts on its best days. It's got to be using plutonium mixed oxide fuel just to get a few extra gigawatts happening. So if you took the $21 billion, and $4.4 million a megawatt for geothermal, which is way over the actual price, you'd be looking at 4.7 gigawatts of geothermal. You don't have to spend $100 million a year on maintenance, like to do with the nuclear stupid plant. There's no toxic. In fact, you can harvest lithium. You can harvest all kinds of precious metals from deep in the earth if you wanted to. I'm not advocating that, but I'm just saying you can actually do something useful. All nuclear does is contaminate everything. The fuel pools are always going to be hemorrhaging. Delivering 1,200 megawatts. So what would you rather have, 1,200 megawatts or 5,000, almost 5,000 megawatts? For the same price. What makes sense? Because like the minute that geothermal, XGS Energy says its advanced geothermal tech is ready to scale up. There's a whole lot of these companies out there. They're going to do a 150 megawatt plant. It's so desperate, it's so hard rather to raise the money. With nuclear, they just throw it out. Hey, how much? What, you want some more? Here's 21 billion. Don't worry, we got lots of money later. We got to make it look good. They'll dump another 20 billion on that. Won't blink an eye. But for geothermal, they get nothing. Drop dead. Geothermal power is the key to cheaper energy in the Canadian Arctic. In the Arctic. No, this is back to the nuclear. To cool itself for a minimum of 7 days without power or operator's action. Well, you can't quantify that assertion when you don't have one. You don't even have an application into the regulatory agency that's complete. You're decades away from bringing it to fruition, and that the technology you're going to use is based on the original reactor, which is going to be 50 feet taller than the largest reactors we currently have, and you're going to call that a small modular reactor. And you're going to do a little trick by hiding half of it underground. So there is no small modular reactors. There's just large, stupid, idiot reactors. Right? Instead of getting a gigawatt, they're going to get 1,200. And they're going to you're going to use more resources than they would have for a single building. They're going to use 3 times more resources than they would for a single building to produce the same power. And they're going to call that a renaissance. These are sick people, boy. These are mentally ill. Take a closer look. Well, we did, didn't we? Supports decarbonization efforts by delivering clean. Like there is nothing clean about nuclear. Just every power plant needs 2 gas, oil, and coal plants dedicated to it. Dedicated to it, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, decade after decade after decade. Seems like I don't know what I'm doing here today for some reason. Oh, I don't either. Look at that. Let me do that again. Oh, okay. I know I get it. Oh, because I had moved everything to another hard drive. Not moved it, but copied it. Here we go. Let me explain some of these things to you. When I say nuclear is dirty, when I say nuclear is dirty, there's a lot of reasons. Just going to show you a couple of obvious reasons. Nuclear is just, it's really nobody's friend. Well, it can't be anybody's friend and still exist, see? It has to destroy the whole planet in order for it to prosper. I'm just going to give you a few examples, though, of what, because I say it a lot lately, and I'm not showing you documentation. That's not very helpful for anybody that's looking for that documentation to bludgeon the industry with. The industry is insane, is the only way you can. So some of the examples I'm going to give you is, we'll put that hopefully, the whole story is crazy, isn't it? Here we go, I'm almost ready, bear with me. Uranium is the dirtiest industry in human history. Bar nothing. There's no industry that hold a candle to the nuclear industry. Here we go. Thank you. Here we go. All right, so when I say nuclear is dirty, here's what I mean by it. It's not like a banana. It's not like walking in sunshine. It's not like rocks. That's what they tell you, right? The radioactive fallout in Japan, there's 30 million one-ton bags that they picked up. And they dump twice much into rivers and lakes and streams and everything, right? There's one picture I'm missing. It's got to be right there somewhere. Oh, well, I clicked past it, I guess. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags and attacks everything in your body, radiation, fallout, man-made. We have no... this is used, so wherever you see fuel, and what you're looking at is tons, metric tons, numbers, like 2,610 metric tons. That's still splitting atoms into your environment. So spread it over your whole country, always poisoning your country. Well, that was the picture that was supposed to go with this one here. They went back to the graveyard after 7 years. If your coal oil or gas plant breaks down, you can still go to the graveyard. They shouldn't have went back. Look, these are one-ton bags of radiation behind them, for goodness sakes. One-ton bags of radiation. They picked up 30 million of these one-ton bags that we know about. And then whoever took this job, whoever that homeless people are in their paper suits, they died that day. They're spraying regions, means there's fuel particulates there, and they're splitting atoms. And the idea is that material will bind with it and stop it from rising up and causing high airborne radiation. But you're still going to have massive gamma shines, neutron bombardment, beta rays, alpha rays, X-rays, and everything else. So think about this one here. This is just a fraction of the missile sites from the nuclear industry. Every one of those missiles are in farmland, in communities. And so if Russia or the alleged, whatever enemy, the USSR at that time or whoever, China, attacks one of these sites because they know they're targeting their country, the military-industrial complex will come here and say, well, they just attacked their boys in their little tiny town. We're going to sit there and let them do that. Are you going to let your firstborn children come join the military? We'll go beat those bloody bastards up. So they're holding every one of those communities as human shields. And on top of that, each of those missiles in those silos, these are missile silos, there's only a fraction of them, use tritium to enhance the power of the weapons, the nuclear bombs. And that has to replace every 10 or 11 years. And they can't contain it. So all these communities, which are in farmlands, the farm is contaminated with at least tritium, tritiated water. They're dumping nuclear waste. The British had ships, special-built ships, and that's all they'd done for 30 years was went out and dumped 45-gallon barrels of nuclear waste, high-level waste, over the side of the boat. And whoever's doing it don't know what they're doing. They wouldn't take the job if they understood it. They have to get it off the boat. They can't bring it back because they get fatal doses to the crew, allegedly. So this is to stop them from bringing it back. And they're just driving around, dropping it on the continental shelf, which is the nursery. Think about this picture here. Like, if you can read the gamma shines, the neutron bombardments, the alpha rays, the beta from your boat, this is catastrophic. And the barrels, when they're thrown overboard, they're crimped on the top and crimped on the bottoms. So when you go down each atmosphere in the ocean, 33 feet, it's an extra 14. So as soon as that goes underwater, there's 14.6 pounds per square inch applied to it. When it gets down past the 33 foot, it's another 14.6 pounds per square inch, so 29 pounds per square inch. Well, the top and the bottom are crimped down. So once it gets down to around 100 feet, the top and the bottom will let go, and that radiation now is permeating throughout that nursery. That's the nursery of the ocean, the continental shelves, and the tide lines. Drumbeat, steel cargo, like France just acknowledged they dumped 200,000 barrels. Who knows? I mean, what they done to the French Polynesians with the nuclear testing was equal to a Nagasaki bomb a week for 12 years of radioactive fallout. It's absurd to do that. It's a war. It's a nuclear war. These barrels are rusted. Look, these got holes in it already. This is nuclear waste at Hanford. And they got an old tarp there to try, I don't know why, but they got an old tarp there, which the gamma shines, the neutron bombardments will break down the integrity of anything. You can't go back, even though they did, this person did, unfortunately, go back to get their picture taken. But these grocery shops, malls, and universities and hospitals and everything are abandoned in Japan because of radioactive fallout. This is not a place you should ever let your loved ones go to. Every country does this. But they show that to your kids, to suck your kids into being complacent. And your kid, well, I want to be a nuclear scientist. I want to be a Spider-Man. I want to be Superman. I want to be... So they hold all these communities. Those dots are missile silos in communities and farmland. And they're holding those communities as human hostages, as human shields. That's what the nuclear industry had done. And then the stuff they're dumping into the ground, it contaminates everything. And I mean everything. This industry, you know, the Navajo Nation had over, was it 15,000 abandoned uranium mines? That's not a pond, that's a chemical dump. That's chemicals. With water, but the water is now chemicals. And so they got a sweet deal. They're allowed to let that evaporate into the community, or actually flood out, like we've seen here in Canada a few times. And Navajo has been devastated by those kind of dam breakages of the chemicals. There's nothing clean about nuclear. They got to get it off the boats. They have no choice. And it breaks open before it gets to the bottom. The mines are what I'm trying to show you is how dirty the whole nuclear thing is, right? You got to do all of this to get enough fuel to run a reactor. Yeah, but it's got the power of 10 tons of coal per gram, Dana. Yeah, but look what you got to do to get. You got to go through 100,000 or 100 tons just to get your gram, you sack of shit. And you got to take chemicals. You got to take chemicals to break it down. Then you spend, for 40 years, North America just dumped it in the ground wherever. Aquifers and every national laboratory for the nuclear industry is built on the biggest aquifers in that part of the country. How can you say something is carbon-free when it has that particular attribute? You have to abandon your cities. But nuclear is not clean. Geothermal is clean. Closed-looped geothermal system of potential source of low-carbon renewable energy. Potential! They identified 1,200 candidate regions that they can do the equivalent of 70% of the current electricity production worldwide can be done with geothermal. And that's without using special techniques, because the nuclear industry, the fusion industry, the small modular reactor industries are raking in several $1 trillion a year worldwide. The geothermal industry gets nothing. And whatever is given to somebody that's guaranteed to fail. The intermittency of solar and wind power sources is a barrier to deploying them on a large scale. Well, that's not true. Last year in 2024, 660 gigawatts came online. That's like 7,000 small modular reactors coming online in 12 months. And then you got dirty bomb everywhere on the planet waiting to go off, waiting for one of these supercell hurricanes to show up, or typhoons or cyclones. 660 gigawatts in 2024, and they expect a 40% increase, which could put you at 400 or 900 gigawatts this year. But this year, 2025 has already surged 64% of what it was in 24. So we're already looking at coming close to 800 gigawatts, which is double the capacity of all the nuclear for the last 80 years in just 12 months. So to suggest that nuclear or solar can't be scaled up is absurd. And there's lots of storage solutions, and none of them should be batteries. There's lots of great solutions like lava rocks, salt, sand will all store huge temperatures for extended periods of time. And there's compressed air storage where you dig mine shafts and your excess energy just gets compressed. You store the heat from that in lava rocks or sand or salt, up to 700-800 degrees easily. It can be stored for weeks or months. And then you can unpack the heat when you want to expand the compressed air to run your turbines. And you can do that in a loop system in over 24 hours for 50 years without no issues. The world installed 380 gigawatts of new solar capacity in the first 6 months, which is more than nuclear combined by a long shot. So if you double that up for this year, that's 760 gigawatts. So why are we talking about 1,200 gigawatts of nuclear that's going to take 15 years to build? When if you put storage with this, problem solved. But the industry has a stranglehold on your whole planet, on your media, on your universities. I don't have an opinion. I don't have conjectures. I'm not allowed to have opinions or conjectures, per se, right? I have to provide documentation because the industry will say, well, how come he didn't give you the documentation? He does it for everything else. Why didn't he give it for that? Oh, because I'm tired. I worked like a dog for so long. I've been at it 24 years. I'm old and broken, washed up. I'm tired. I got a million excuses. Which one do you want to hear? And they're all real. Kenya is actually one of the biggest geothermal places on the planet at a gigawatt. That tells you how much love the geothermal has gotten. None. But it used to be 37% of Kenyans had electricity. Because of geothermal, it's 76 to 80% of the country now has electricity. Because of geothermal. And it didn't take 15 years. Ukraine war briefing. Russia claims test of nuclear-powered missile condemned as a flying Chernobyl. Do you get what's going on here? The reason it was rejected by everybody back in the 50s and 60s when there was an enormous amount of enthusiasm towards the disgusting nuclear industry, they still rejected it because you have a nuclear missile with a nuclear engine, so you're spraying out radiation, radioactive fallout as you're flying thousands of kilometers. It's absurd to even develop the technology because to develop it, you have to contaminate the planet. Stayed in the air for 15 hours of pumping out radioactive fallout. And nobody knows how much, right? It's just, I don't believe they have it, personally. I don't want to believe it. Let me put it that way. Trump's nuclear renaissance opened the U.S. border to Korea's nuclear builders. Yeah, but South Korea doesn't have the manpower anymore. They don't have the supply chain. They definitely don't have the welders. Right? They need tens of thousands of more welders. And working for the nuclear industry in that capacity is a shit job. This wave cannon could set a record by drilling 19,000 meters. 19,000 meters. So 60,000 feet. 60,000 feet. So 5,000 feet is a mile. So all they're going to is what they call it looks like a plasma cutter, right? There's a couple of good techniques for, not that they get funding, not that the universities are pitching in. They're too busy working for fusion and the fabled small modular reactor fake industry. This is quasi-electric. And so they're going to mass produce this technology so we can drill deep, no matter where we're to, even in Canada in the granite, we can drill down and get into the hot temperatures for geothermal that'll compete with gas, oil, and coal and nuclear. Like if we developed geothermal, started developing it, say, 40 years ago, we wouldn't have gas, oil, coal, or nuclear. Everything would be geothermal. If we started 30 years ago, if we put the same amount of enthusiasm and prominence as we give to fusion, which doesn't exist, small modular reactors that don't exist, to an industry that has no right to exist in the first place because of its emissions from 1,000 fuel pools are catastrophic to everything with replicating cells. There is no nuclear renaissance, though. There really isn't. They have the same gigawatts in nuclear industry as they had in the early 90s. So how can there be a nuclear renaissance when they don't even have applications for the regulatory agencies for their advanced technologies? You got to build all the test reactors, you got to run it for a decade, get the kinks out of it, or more. When you do the application, you have 2 million pieces of paper. So then the Nuclear Regulatory Commission needs to hire 300, 400, 500, 600 people to flush out the 2 million pieces of paper. Then they're going to submit a lot of it back to the architects and engineers for the companies to redesign it because of flaws. And, you got to coordinate all of this. You'd have a 5, 6, 7 year ordeal before you actually get a working application into a regulatory agency that both sides can agree upon. Then you got to build a test reactor, make sure that doesn't blow up and contaminate the country and everything else. And which, quite a few of them do. And they're all built, all these laboratories, these national research centers, these national laboratories are built on the biggest aquifers in that part of the country that are incredibly contaminated from just the legacy Manhattan projects. Hanford nuclear site had dumped 450 billion gallons of radioactive sludge, dehydrated. So who knows how much they release into the environment to the dehydration, which is absurd, by the way, evil. But 450 billion gallons of this stuff, it is splitting atoms, dumped into the soil. And you're talking about an aquarium, let's put it in the context of a 6-foot wide aquarium of nuclear waste, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. And that's just Hanford. And that's just one facet of the Manhattan Project, not counting the legacy at Hanford that had 9 reactors, plutonium breeder reactors, for the weapon industry, for weapons they couldn't even use. Right? And they'd create all this pollution to make a technology that they can't even use. Right, the nuclear weapons are doomsday machines because of the radioactive fallout. But that's what nuclear power plants turn out to be. So the more, they can't have weapons without nuclear power plants. They're the fuel cycle. And the fuel cycle is about irradiating the fuel so it starts producing plutonium for the bombs, and then they use those chummies to aggregate the plutonium. I can't even remember the name of that for some reason. So Hyundai Engineering Construction recently clinching of a contract for a $500 billion nuclear power project, $500 billion for data centers. Why do we need those data centers? Why do we need that kind of control over every facet of everybody's life on the entire planet? Why would you need that kind of control? And who needs that kind of... Who said, hey, I want you to control every facet of my life 24 hours a day? Who woke up one morning and decided that they're going to make that decision for me and you and everybody else? Why would you need that? Because that's the only way, that's the only thing that can work. Because the technology, that's what it's all, that's its only useful purpose, is if you're incredibly invasive to every facet of everybody's life, then that technology is appropriate. If you're not going to, permeate into every facet of every human's life on the entire planet, that technology has no useful purposes. It's too expensive. There's no way. So what do they need to micromanage every facet of everybody's life on the entire planet for, and aggregate it and everything else? And why do you need that? Everybody's going to have to leave their curtains closed and just put sunroofs in their houses because the cameras everywhere looking and everything. Like, you're almost afraid to get a fridge because you got smart fridges, smart stoves, smart this, smart that, smart toasters, smart... so if it's got the word smart attached to it, it's got a chip into it. Got a chip into it is it's taking data. And, of course, the Internet of Things is all about everything in your house having a chip that is sending data to somebody for something. So this is madness. We don't need that kind of technology on our planet. What do you need that for? And we got to create all this nuclear is the only way to make this work? Really? So, it's double evil on a scale that most people can't even comprehend because of radioactive fallout. It's so hard for people to wrap their mind around the madness of something so simple as that frame, of radioactive fallout. It covers the whole planet. It attacks everything with replicating cells till the end of time. It never goes away. You don't need nuclear meltdowns. You don't need nuclear wars to exterminate the planet. You just need fuel pools like we have now, worldwide, splitting atoms into the environment, which happens to all be surrounded by farms as far as you can see. The Fermi, no doubt Enrico Fermi, America's Project Matador Campus, Amarillo, Texas, the world's largest integrated energy AI complex, with a total investment expected to exceed $500 billion. So the data centers now are water hungry and energy hungry, which are driving up the energy prices for everybody. Which is absurd. That's not what we haven't got energy to give away to these companies. so they can use it to steal our essence and then weaponize that against humanity so they can make some money on the stock market. Dude, isn't that madness? This is stupid and dangerous. Hurricane Melissa intensifies Category 5 on a path to slam into Jamaica as the island's strongest recorded storm. Let's bring up some recent headlines. I'll bring it up on the screen for you here. Oh, where am I? Already there. Oh, I'm still in that screen. My apology. Oh, I couldn't. Only did bloop, 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 bloop. Yeah, here we go. Let me turn the volume down on this for a second, in case I accidentally click on something. I don't goose everybody out there. Oh, that's just YouTube. Hang on a second. I smurfed up. Let's get some recent headlines happening here. Yep. Just sit there, Dana? No. There we go. I smurfed up. Supposed to have that right there in my bookmarks, but I didn't. My apologies. I'll be right with you. Let's try Google. Let's just see what the most recent headlines are for Google. The past hour. And Jamaica's preparing. You can't prepare for something that's going to come ashore at 200 plus miles per hour. Wind gust of 240, 250 is the most likely unfortunate outcome. This is going to be horrific if that happens. Let's see if the winds have died down since the show started. 175 mile per hour wind, ABC is still reporting. So it's clearly looking like, now, you know, it's nighttime, you would think it would cool off a little bit and the winds might reflect that, right? So I don't know, but it's not looking that way because the ocean is so hot. And so all of these headlines are within the last hour. And so the consensus is and see if you see, there's the wind reaching 175. So it's going to be gusting 230 to 250 to 260. It's going to gust 250, 260 or something like that. Jamaica, now a category storm. Let's see if travel press is not really something credible. I don't know who the hell they are. See what the Weather Network, they're not really credible either. When was the last time you seen the Weather Channel was right? And there's quite a few of them who wouldn't mind giving a bit of a beating to it. They'll pull the sweater over their head, a few uppercuts. Sustained winds of 280 kilometers an hour, 175 miles per hour. I think that's what 280 kilometers is, isn't it? Yeah, 174 miles per hour. So we're seeing a consensus. Could Fukushima radioactive fallout worldwide be a catalyst behind Hurricane Melissa's ferocious wind? I provided a lot of documentation for my assertions, but the people who gave me a thumb down didn't provide nothing. Just kidding you. Not really, though. They didn't provide us with nothing, did they? That's because they got nothing. Like the small modular reactor, it's 240 feet tall. It's taller than the biggest reactors we got on the planet by 50 feet. What's so freaking small about that? Category 5, the path slammed in Jamaica's. So we're expecting landslides. We're expecting huge rainfall, and maybe, as much as 3 feet coming down the mountains. And that's going to meet up with the storm surge that's be coming in. These bays, the storm surge is going to go in there, and that's going to elevate the height of it. You could be talking 25 feet in Kingston, for instance. You're talking about winds that are going to turn every object that you normally walk by on the street into a projectile. It's the fastest and biggest, nastiest storm we've ever seen. Potentially, it's not potential. It's going to be an unimaginable impact. Even if there's no wind gust at 175 miles per hour. If you're in a car doing 175 miles per hour and you stick your arm straight out the window, what do you think is going to happen to it? You think you might not even get it back. It's going to turn. There's not going to be a building there that didn't look like it had at least sandblasting done to it. You're going to see no branches on the trees. Most of the grass will be stripped off. Topsoil will be stripped off in most areas, in the facing side anyway. You're going to see all the trees, branches. You see all these tree sticks where there used to be a forest. You're going to see areas where the pavement is stripped off the ground. And I think over there they use beach coral sand for their cement, and then they put that for their roads a lot of the times. It's friendly to the tourists, who usually chip their teeth when they fall on cement and pavements. 4 million tourists a year going through this place. Powerful gusts top 200 plus miles per hour when they're out flying around. Oh, it's going to be so much worse than that. It's going to pick up speed on that landmass because that landmass is tinder dry. And that's going to supercharge it on top of that, even worse than what it already is. It's going so slow, it's going to stall right on the shorelines, the communities, and just annihilate them. With the storm surge on top of that. Well, the storm surge is not going to go away for 7, 8, 9 hours. It should be going away in about 2 hours. But because these post-Fukushima storms are moving so slow, hurricane force winds extending about 195 miles from the center. So the country is only 150 miles long and 50 miles wide. So you're going to have hurricane force winds in the entire Jamaica. And then it's headed to Cuba. I'm only talking about ground zero, so-called ground zero, but I mean, what's left over and is going to hit Cuba is going to be brutal. And the Bahamas, Haiti, and everywhere else is going to be brutal. But Jamaica is going to take some right center punch. It's just, my heart's broken for the people. Moving at 3 miles per hour, these are huge. This could take a whole day instead of a couple hours. So I don't expect to see many trees lift. I expect to see everything with projectiles sticking out of them, like broken pieces of wood and houses that have torn apart, and shanties and temporary accommodations. And particularly, like, the skyscrapers are going to lose all their furniture, I would imagine. That's what we've seen at St. Kitts a few years ago with the supercell hurricanes that went through there, moving at 3 miles per hour. And then by stalling, you're sucking up all this water out of the ocean with these enormous vacuum cleaner, better than a vacuum cleaner type winds, right? And so it's going to dump because it's stalled there, it's sucking, and then the water is being surging in. My goodness, it's just heartbreaking. Destructive winds, especially in the mountains. So the mountains, you can expect to see 260 mile per hour winds. Sustained, gusting the oh my goodness stuff. Won't surprise me with this storm. I pray and I hope I'm wrong. I am telling anybody that's in that environment, for goodness sakes, that's not the spot to be. Melissa could strengthen even more during the next 12 to 24 hours. Really, it's doing 175 miles per hour, and it's going to strengthen more. And I agree, I concur, unfortunately. Over the warm Caribbean waters south of Jamaica, where there is relatively low wind shear, forecasters said. This is a Fukushima nuclear storm is what we're looking at. Maximum sustained winds are 160 miles per hour. Now we know are 175. And they're not giving it the prominence of the gust. You can expect the gust on something like that to be 60 to 100 miles per hour. It's 175, so add 100 miles per hour onto it. And somewhere, if you're recording, you had equipment that survives it, you're going to see those numbers, particularly in the mountains. But that path up the mountains from the coastline, this is going to be just horrifying to see tomorrow. And I mean, tomorrow morning when you wake up, wherever you're to, this is going to be going down. That'll be prime time. Daylight is prime, holy shit time. There's going to be nobody live streaming from Haiti. And so what you do tomorrow, late tomorrow, when you start seeing all the damage, is go back 2 days and look at the footage of them doing their preparation, and look at the trees and look at the infrastructure, and come back to the recent videos and you'll see the damage, the definition of the damage more clearly, right? The strongest storm on the planet this year officially. 175 mile per hour winds. Now that was 4 or 5 hours ago, this particular story. With stronger gusts, really? Now, why do they not, like, you should be given a prominence. You should say gusts could be 225 to 250 miles per hour. You got to warn the people. You have, unfortunately, people are pretty naive. They're pretty gullible. They're reading that, well, honey, is, at least the gusts are not going to be too bad. There's a lot of people, but if you told them the truth, if you told them, hey, this could hit 250, they're going to honey, we're going to have to leave. Can't leave the pets behind. The mother-in-law, she can take care of the house, but the rest of them can go. That's a joke, by the way. Terrible joke on top of that. It's just a prejudiced, bigoted, biased joke, actually. I apologize for it. It was sustained winds. It was funny, though, for a second, you got to admit. It was sustained winds of 175 miles per hour. Hurricane Allen from 1980 during the nuclear bombs still holds the title as debate that won't last much longer. In fact, 190 mile per hour sustained winds is allowed to get broken tonight, thanks to Fukushima. Like all these supercell storms go back to the nuclear age, nuclear bombs, the nuclear dumping, the nuclear meltdowns, the Mayak, the Sellafields, the 3 Mile Islands, the Santa Susanas. Pilot whale stranding at Northland's Twilight Beach, 27 dead. And they got no pictures. That's convenient. Well, a couple tides came in, washed them away. Well, how come you got no pictures, though? Do you really think that whoever found it didn't take pictures? In 2014, 2015, 2016, this is from January 18, not this week. In 2014, 2015, 2016, for instance, the pilot whales always had necropsies done, animal autopsies, and starvation. They had no food in their stomach whatsoever on top of that. All the whales we're seeing dying are dying of starvation. In Nova Scotia, Canada, some Good Samaritans rescued a whale. Not whales, but a whale. As far as I understand, it was just one whale. But you can see how skinny his tail is. You can see the define. It's like he got a fin going up his backbone. That's not normal. That should be really symmetrical. It should be like very plumb. It shouldn't be defined like that. That's that tail there is the epitome of emaciation. And I zoomed in on these pictures, so I still can't qualify that because we didn't get to see the body. We didn't get to see if it had a peanut head, which are important to quantify that assertion that I just made. But from what we know now, because we cover this all the time, but when I see that kind of picture there, see where his hands is to, see how skinny that is? It's almost like a piece of cardboard that's bent. So these are definitely telltale signs of starvation, emaciation. And that's they got a little video with no pictures. That's how interesting, before it goes pushed back into the water. As far as I know, there's only one whale, but I could be wrong. They keep showing the same clip over and over as far as I can tell. I was just trying to get, with these pictures here, I'm zoomed in, I'm trying to see the health of its, if I can see the rib cages, if I can see the peanut head, if I can see the spinal column, stuff like that, right? And the definitions I'm seeing are very sharp definitions. Hurricane Melissa, I keep calling her Militia for some reason, Melissa. 175 mile per hour winds. And that's still holding true. It's probably worse though. This is sustained winds. So you're talking about gusts at least 225. At least. To suggest that winds like this that are sustained are not gusting exponentially is very dishonest, and I'm not going to play that game. Sustained winds of 175 miles per hour means gust at least 250 in some places. This is coming ashore regardless of wind gust. If it comes ashore at 150 miles per hour, then there's no infrastructure built to sustain that. And everything that gets torn apart, and everything is turned into a projectile that will tear apart any infrastructures that have stronger building codes will get pummeled with projectiles at enormous speeds. Monster hurricane. No, this is a heartbreaking hurricane. This is an annihilating hurricane. This is a catastrophic. It's going to strip the trees. It's just, I hope and pray I'm wrong. I hope and pray I'm wrong. Yeah, technically speaking, people are going to be blown away. I'll guarantee you some people will get blown away. That's what happened St. Kitts a couple of years ago, right? And that was the U.S. Navy had said it was gusting over 265 miles per hour. And actually, one of the new hotels they had there, it blew all the furniture out of this 14-story hotel. It blew all the windows, all the doors out of it, all the dressers, all the beds, all the couches. Blew the doors off all the cabinets, the fridges, right out of the buildings. Skyscraper. Steve C.G. White, 63. Are you in Jamaica? Yeah, hydrogen power. I love it. Hydrogen power is 100%. I was thinking today, why can't we why can't we have a hydrogen car and make hydrogen at the same time? Why can't we have a hydrogen car, for instance, or even an electric car? I don't like the electric car because of the energy in the car itself. Hydrogen's much better. So why can't we have like a little windmill that pops up with a little windmill on it that's protected, producing energy all night long and making hydrogen for your vehicle or your home or right, these little kits that you just plug and play into your machines, bolt on with magnets or whatever the case may be. Hi, Dana. Dana's here tonight. I know I think he's been on the go. I'm not sure. I was worried. I thought he was sick. Oh, he was in New Mexico. I know Dana was going to come down here a number of years ago with his RV, and we weren't allowed to travel. The planet was shut down by the scum of the earth. Yeah, no power is better than nuclear power. That's right. No Texas. Okay, Steve, thank you. So, Padre Island. You guys got pummeled a few years ago with a hurricane, didn't you? With a supercell hurricane? I know you do hurricanes quite a bit every few years, right? I'm sorry about that. Let's finish it out anyway. We still got a little ways to go, 15 minutes or something. So let me come back up with some more recent headlines. Let me bring that back up on the screen for you. I'll be right with you. Make sure you give us a thumbs up if you make it that far. That's the best way to help me. Give me a share. Put it in your favorites, hopefully, or something like that. Let's have a debate. Hopefully I'm wrong and you can make videos and come here and make fun of me that I was so wrong. I wouldn't mind that. That'd be awesome. Just beat the shit out of me if I'm wrong. Give it to me. I got no issues. That's a good thing. Me being wrong is one of the greatest things imaginable. That's so sad, eh? You notice I got different badges for the nuclear industry to get around. I got different caps. It's going to be very difficult to copy and paste one of my other shows into my videos now. To get rid of something I said, right? I can fill up the gap with a clip from one of my other videos. They censor every one of my shows are censored, like holy smokes. And the comments won't show up, the live stream comments will show up in 12 hours, if we're lucky. The amount of views won't show up in my section inside for 14 hours or something. I've been telling these stories, doing these presentations for 14 years straight on this topic. I've been at this for 24 years, anti-nuclear. Okay, let's refresh the page and see if we can find anything new and exciting. Is now the strongest storm on the planet 60 minutes ago. I did refresh that, didn't I? I wasn't looking at them yet. How close is it getting? How close? YouTube handles sometimes gives you more. I'm not going to play the videos, but sometimes they give you more insight because of the headlines. Because, you know, a typical YouTube video can get way more than all the media combined on a subject. Hours before the Hurricane Melissa, Jamaica holds its breath. I'd be digging a hole. I'd be digging a hole for when the shit comes flying. I'd be down in that hole and shelter it. Park a car over your head or something. Stake it to the ground. Scumbag media are there. It's going to be ugly, and they're not going to have access to healthcare. They're not going to have access to shelter in the morning. They're not going to have access the food or electricity or Wi-Fi or gasoline or generators or the necessities or diapers or anything. And so the media is being pretty nonchalant about the most catastrophic land storm we've ever seen in the Northern Hemisphere. They're like, it's going to gust a little bit, 175 miles per hour. When I was a young cupper, I used to have to dig our way all the way to the school every morning. And blisters on my toes. Well, I grew up with we had no automobiles, nothing like that. And I used to lug buckets of water to school every morning. Or not to school, but before school every morning. And my neighbor had a couple of geese. Goose and a gander. And they were big and mean too, man. And so I would have to walk all the way out to the river with 2 5-gallon buckets. I probably weighed 90 pounds or something when I was 13. And I would have to walk all the way out to the river. And it was like, there's 170 people lived in the community. We lived on the bottom of a mountain on houses built on stilts. And, there's no TV, no radio, there was no highways there. Everything was done by the ocean. And every morning my job was to go get 2 buckets of water for laundry and for laundry, and then get 2 more buckets for dishes and cooking and stuff like that, and 2 more buckets for the bathroom and that. And so, you're talking about there's 100 pounds altogether. And so you're in the wintertime, bitter winter here on the East Coast, and the pad, these are pads full of rocks and everything else, right? And there's lots of ice, and so you slip and slide, and then you go in there, and you get the buckets. Now, the little bastards, excuse the language, but the little bastard goose and gander were pretty smart. They waited for me till I got the full buckets of water, and then they come out and try to grab me. Of course, I'd try to kick them, which didn't help things. I don't know how many times their owners come here and say, "Don't do that, you're going to make it worse." And they're like, "Too late." I never did manage to kick the little bastards. And so here you are, when I finally get to school in the morning, my pants legs were just sheets of ice because I wasted so much water on me. My hands were torn apart. And we were allowed to leave school. If I seen my dad's boat coming in, I was allowed to leave school and go down and unload the boat. My job at that age was unloading the boat and cleaning the boat, washing the boat, fueling the boat up, bring the boat over and put it on its mooring, and go over and we'd do a lot of hook and line. So we used to do 4,000 to 5,000 hooks and lines a day. And every crack in my hands was wide open, right? All the ones every crack in your hand, your fingers and everything else was wide open, bleeding my whole childhood from hook and line, right? And you're baiting up with fresh squids. You can imagine getting fresh squid into all those cuts. That was really something. And wasn't sure, that's when I started going on the ocean full time at that age. And so I was given a 303, 12 gauge, a 22, charge accounts for shells. I was given a speedboat, a brand new 15 horsepower Evinrude, or Johnson rather, and a gas account, and a beer account and a cigarette account at 13. I'd done a man's work every day too, though. I was treated like a man, even though it was the furthest thing from it. And I negotiated all of that because I was going to have to do work all day on all the fishing gear, right? And by the time I was 15, I was raised around people 70, 80, 90 years old. They would come over to the shed where their kids were out on the ocean and fix up their fishing gear that was broken from the previous trips. And so they taught me all these little, you learned the old way. These people never even sat in cars. So you learn all this old school techniques. I'm an expert for for fixing nets, for instance, for fishing gear, hooks and lines, stuff like that, for splicing, including wires. I'm an expert for all of that stuff. I was raised the old way, to respect people. And you call everybody sir, and they always tell you not to do that, and you always done it. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble, am I, at this stage? My apologies. A very humble childhood, right? You work like... So when it got dark, it was time to go to bed. There was no TV, there was no radios. And you were isolated, and you depended on each other. And if you want to know something about carpentry, you had to go talk to that person. You want to know something about guns, you had to talk to that person. You want to know something about guitars, you had to talk to this person. You want to know something about life, you talk to these older people. The older people were you went to for wisdom. And you never mocked them, you never denigrated them. You treated them with dignity and respect, and you coveted them. They were the heroes. They built, without them your community wouldn't exist. And one of my jobs at that age was to go out on the ocean and get, because you didn't have supermarkets, was to go out and get enough birds to feed the family. So most people, they take the 12 gauge and they use birdshot. I'd done it with a 22. So you're out on the North Atlantic open ocean, bobbing around in this little 10-foot flat bottom boat, and they go and get 15 birds. You had to come in and clean them all, wash everything, get rid of all the feathers and everything, clean everything up, and then that would feed the family for a week, right? So you only took whatever you were going to use. You never took anything extra. You lived off the land. You lived smart, too. I think I stalled about as long as I can. That's pretty good, though, you got to admit. Not bad. Not bad at all. 175 miles per hour is the most frightening. I've never seen a headline like that. So I'm going to give it the prominence it deserves. I'm paying attention to it. We're probably going to have to cover this again tomorrow night. And I'm not going to apologize for it because it's a Fukushima storm. It's a radiation storm. It's born from 14 years of brutal emissions from the biggest disaster in human history. It lost 36 reactor cores, and each one was equal to 100 Chernobyls. Chernobyl was a new reactor. It was a small reactor. It was a graphite reactor. It didn't have decades of reactor cores stored at the top of the buildings. Thank you, James. Bless your heart. I don't really care, James, as long as you got a song there. Tell me you got another song posted. I've got to be an asshole and do stuff like that. I got to order more of this stuff, right? I was thinking there before I went live. I need to order another $100 or something dollars worth of this stuff to do what I want to do. Sounds like I'm in that position to do it. We're going to play. James put up a lot of music and so on. And he's graced his page with probably the best picture you can find of me is that picture right there. I was taken in Telegraph Cove on a research expedition of the die-offs headed towards Alaska. I really like that song right here, Fukushima Lessons of Man Each Harm. James has over almost 450 songs, 440 songs right now. Megawatts to mega waste. And the song we played at the beginning was from this site right here. I put a link into it for the description. You'll find it, or in the chat room. You'll find it under my descriptions also. He's got so many songs, I can't keep up with them all. Oh, I can listen to them all, and I do. But he also does a lot of these he does all the graphics himself, by the way. Well, with AI, right? But there's a lot of work goes into putting this together. It's not as simple as just bling bling, right? And life is great. Everything is coordinated. It's a lot of work. It's an absurd amount of work. Fukushima Lessons of Managed Harm. And we're going to play that tonight. I only got 220 megabytes left. I got to transfer some stuff. I see what looks at that. It's my external. You have a great night, a great day tomorrow. If you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Another 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to end that. And thank you, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Make sure you share it if you can. Oh, I got to turn the volume on. I'm going to adjust the volume on my side. I'm pretty fast. We'll see you on the next show. Take care. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. And hugs for everybody in Jamaica.
いただきありがとうございます。体験をそのままできるだけあったかい言葉で伝えてください。ただし聞く人が不安になるような言い回しは控えていただければと思います。このプリントに書いてある通り、前向きな語り口とはっきりした事実として。
Request storyteller online. Emotional signature within range. Response protocol initiated. Visitor group count 14. Guide script presented in neutral tones. Nothing remains, but we remain. Inhalation pause. Eye contact trained. Core status omitted. Recovery set instead of uncertainty. Tour ends at viewing deck. Tanks not visible. One storyteller requested removal. Brought up fatigue, recurring dreams. Panel advised against withdrawal. Community needs your strength. Emotional override enforced. Medication not provided. Session length adjusted. Public feedback positive. This is the story we are clear to tell. This is the version that cannot alarm. This is the grief shaped for display. This is the lesson of managed harm. Photographs removed from display wall. Session edits approved by committee. Unregistered memory erased. Rephrased for harmony. Phrases like radiation and exposure. Replaced with past circumstance. No further questions. This is the story we are clear to tell. This is the version that cannot alarm. This is the grief shaped for display. This is the lesson of managed This is not the truth, but it is allowed. This is not recovery, but it is approved. This is not over, but it has been narrated.